Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Noble, and today we want to make it loud and big, and we're going all out there to talk about masculinity. So with me I have a friend in the studio who has convinced me, or has tried to convince me, that we don't have anything called toxic masculinity. So we want to have that debate, but first of all, welcome to the show, Dannish.
Thank you so much, my brother. I prefer Odongo, actually. I prefer Odongo.
Yeah. So you're Odongo.
Yes.
Why would you prefer Odongo from Dannish?
Just that name has a bit more nuance and a bit more context and a bit more identity rooted in it than Dannish. So when you say Dannish, what does that mean? Is it a cookie? Is it a pastry? What is it? If you say Odongo, somebody can tell you it's the last of the twins in my language, so in my community. So it has a bit of some meaning and depth.
Wow.
Yeah.
So have you had discussion with your mom that I would prefer Odongo, or they call you Odongo?
Yeah, at home they call many of my close friends call me Odongo because they know I prefer Odongo.
All right.
Yes.
So welcome to the show.
Asante
and I want you
sana.
to tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
So first of all, I'm a human being trying to stay alive in this world that is hunting men.
This world that is hunting men.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. But of course I'm a writer, I'm an artist, a creative, but I'm trying to run away from those things defining me, because ultimately when I stop being a creative, I'm still a human being. When I stop being a writer, when I stop being a journalist, when I stop doing all these things, what I call the doing, the being is there, which is I'm a human being, not a human doing. So I try to, because also we change. Previously I started out as a marketing guy, did fantastic marketing work. I got bored, got into the media space, left. I'm now in the NGO space. So
did you get bored with the media space as well?
No, I didn't get bored, but I'm just saying that, you see, we move and there's so many facets, but the problem is that we're so caught up in defining people in very narrow, pigeonholed, one-dimensional sort of identities that if I know Andreas is just a podcast host, I'd be shocked if I found out that you're actually a good footballer. I'm just giving an example. I'd be shocked if I found out that you're actually somebody who's passionate about bugs and animals, and you spend your time in nature trying to analyze them. So we try to struggle seeing people in different dimensions.
So apart from that, you're a male advocate, like you advocate for men being just the people they are. I mean,
not necessarily male. I'd say I'm pro holistic wellness in society, and holistic wellness can only be achieved if we equip both men and women, and if we address the fundamental issues that they face based on their own lived realities. So assuming that you're working out and you go to the gym and you only do one dumbbell curl on one left hand, this is a side will look like a Popeye hand, like it'll be huge, but this is a side will not be huge. So if we only empower one aspect of society, then this side gets hurt. So my passion really, and I run an organization called the Wellness Tribe, and the Wellness Tribe core purpose is to build a thriving, prosperous, and happy nation. And there's no way we can build a prosperous and happy nation if we leave anybody behind. Men, women, the elderly, anybody behind. So I'm a human rights advocate who believes that holistic wellness can only be achieved if we empower both genders.
Wow. So Dannish, I want to start it from the top. Last year, I invited you to talk to a number of university students at the Kenyatta University. And the theme that year was about suicide prevention. Apart from that, they were saying that there are a number of toxic masculinity that has contributed to this. And you came out so strong and said, first of all, there is nothing like toxic masculinity. Now let's speak to that, Dannish.
Yes, because first of all, as a journalist, I understand the power of something called framing. So framing is not just telling a story, but it's how it's told. So today, if we decide to frame a certain community as violent stone throwers, you realize the stereotype that community suffers and what that does in how they engage the police, in how the police deals with them during protest, But when we say that people are lazy and they don't work hard as part of this country, then what it does is that framing enables people from outside who might feel stronger and whatever to come and grab property, and as has happened in this part of the country. So framing is extremely important. So when we frame masculinity as toxic, we are first of all labeling an entire an entire group of people, almost 50% of the world population, because if we define masculinity on a narrow level of high testosterone levels, then we'd say that, you know, people who identify as men have a higher testosterone level, and so you are labeling this, all of this 50% of them as toxic, and therefore what do you do now? You make it easier for them to be killed. Like, you know very well that prison populations in this world are 90% men. You make it easy for them to not have compassion. So today, if you find a homeless man, you're likely to not show them compassion than a homeless woman. If you try to, if you continue to call them toxic, then whenever there's a sexual gender-based violence, without understanding the nuance and the context, we only see the criminal justice system as the solution to dealing with men. So we see men as problematic that needs to be removed so that women can be safe. And I think that's very simplistic. I also think that is extremely damaging, and that's not helping the work of making the world a safer place for both men, women, children, and the elderly.
So you believe that founded on such kind of perspective is where we generate the term toxic masculinity?
Yes.
So Dannish, you know, we're talking about...
So the origin of the word toxic masculinity happens in the 80s during there's a sort of a male movement, mostly in Europe. But mostly in feminine literature, it comes around 2015, where they mainstream this word to define certain, what they call negative attributes of masculinity. Because remember, masculinity is, these are social constructs or expectations, both social and biological, that we expect men to perform. We expect men to perform. Men do not. You are Andreas, you are born, and you're born within a certain community. So which means that you turn out based off of the culture that raises you. So we cannot say that masculinity is toxic. We'd probably need to say that the society that raises men is toxic by putting unnecessary, burdensome expectations on people who have fragile shoulders, and when then they are crushed, then we begin to blame them. While the biggest and the highest number of people who enforce masculinity traits are actually women. For example, let me just give you this example. Who's likely to shame you if you don't have money?
I think a woman.
Yes. Who's likely to shame you if you're not good in bed, assuming that you're a heterosexual male?
That has to come.
Who talks about the size of course I know men, within the male circles there's the masculinity hierarchy, but sometimes I personally feel like, and this is my personal opinion, it's not scientific, that when it's within the male circles, it's sort of like a challenge. But when it comes to the opposite gender, you want to prove yourself, you want to, and that's why now we have the pills that men are taking right now, because they want to perform in bed. As if it's expected that you ought to perform in bed. The other person's work is just to receive. That if you don't satisfy them, there's something wrong with you. And we're not asking, what if there's something wrong with them? That maybe it's not just easy to satisfy them. Why are we putting all these expectations on one person when they say that it takes two to tango?
Oh my God. So we want to get into, I want to challenge you a little bit, you know. Previously, like years ago, we didn't have bigger statistics talking about more men committing suicide, and some of the latest statistics show that more men actually commit suicide.
Die by suicide, that's the right word, die by suicide.
Now, there are beliefs that men have that probably pressure them and pushes them towards the nose. So would you say that whatever these beliefs, you know, like expectations to perform, you know, do they push men to the nose, or who are piling these expectations on men? Are we doing it by ourselves, or there's a whole group elsewhere like pushing us or giving us that pressure? You
know, Andreas, that's a very good question. One of the works we do at the Wellness Tribe is we promote mental health for men, of course, also plus women. And there's something we call the irony of suicide, because women are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with depression. Men are 3 0.5 times more likely to die by suicide.
Yes.
It's not because of expectations or gender norms, because people don't study this thing. That's the problem. It's because, one, men die through very violent means, which is very difficult for you to survive. So for example, a man would drive a vehicle at high speed and plunge into maybe, or ram into a lorry or something like that. Chances of you surviving is very difficult. Men often die at odd hours of the night, perhaps at 3 a.m. Most of death by suicide by men often is usually in the morning, 4 a.m., 3 a.m., when there's no chance for you to be saved. And then last but not least, men are very committed, which is a good thing in terms of masculinity. When they decide that they want to do something, they will do it. So just the same way it serves them well, that if a man decides that they want to get married, they will get married. But if a man also decides that they are dying, they will die by suicide. So it's not the expectations, it's just it's access to, like for example in the West, mostly in the European world and the US, most men die by guns. So that also tells you about some sort of access to resources. Because for you to afford a gun, it means you're a man of a certain financial caliber. So that's one. Two, also it's just because of that devotion and the method that they choose to die. So it's not really about the societal expectation. The societal pressure comes in terms of leading many men first to make bad decisions. So for example, you find many men who are in debt. They're in debt because of they bought things that they did not need to impress people who perhaps were temporary, or to, perhaps get a woman, which I think is the dumbest thing a man can do. To live for the approval of a woman is extremely dumb, because ultimately there's a man who's better than you elsewhere. So if you
if you fail to keep up.
Exactly. So those are some of the things that eventually leads now to depression and anxiety and some of these things that eventually lead to many men having what I call functional drug abusers. So you find that some of these men are really, because we don't use the word addict, we use the word alcohol use disorder or drug use disorder. So when you say that, you find that many men have functional drug use disorder that has not been diagnosed as a problem, because you know what, by the way, we're just managing. So I'm in debt, I'm rent arrears, my wife does not respect me, or I feel like so, my children perhaps are enraged by me, but I'm gonna have to function as a man and continue. And that happens a lot, and that's So
that's where the problem is.
That's one of the problem.
One of the problems.
The problem also with the word toxic masculinity is that it cuts across very, very complex issues, societal, biological experiences, and it lumps them into one word, toxic masculinity.
Yes.
But Andreas,
so there's nothing toxic.
There's nothing toxic.
Okay, go
there's
ahead
nothing
now.
toxic.
There's
so for example,
toxic.
if assuming that we were to use, so let's say you have like a growth in some part of your body, and we go and take a piece to do biopsy. Imagine if the doctors or people who do biopsy would just go and decide that, oh, this is malaria, without evidence, without understanding where is this from, what is causing it, how do we treat it, what are the treatment options. We do that a lot elsewhere, but except with men. Men, we don't do that. Men, we decide that, oh, by the way, it's toxic. Let's pass a punitive Sexual Offences Act, so that when a male child who's under 18 has sex with a girl child who's under 18, the male child is perceived guilty before they are proven innocent. And that's why you find that there are many boys who are actually in jail right now who had consensual sex with people who are underage, because some of these laws we pass to punish people. Another thing we do is that in this country we lose about 64 billion shillings per year to sexual gender-based violence, which is a big problem. But our problem is that we only see the lens of criminal justice system. So if a man has violence with a woman, we don't think about, is there rehabilitative methods? Do we have other dispute resolution mechanisms that can actually make it a bit more progressive? So don't ever say anything about toxic masculinity, and I want us to use this platform to hopefully try and change that conversation, so that we take it back to the original reason why we are trying to do this. It's what is going on with men. That is the conversation we should have. What is going on with men? What's happening? Yes.
I want to give you a case study.
Yes.
A man is raised from a community that believes a woman should not talk back at me. So in the house, with a girlfriend, with a wife, whatever, they have a disagreement. and a woman talks back. And for him, there is that belief that where I come from, women don't talk back at men, and then he goes ahead to, like batter her. Where is now the place of that kind of, because they would want to believe that is masculinity. As a man, we're talking, I'm a man, you don't talk back at me.
I'd want to know which culture is that. Just so that we're not having a hypothetical culture like what's the name of this city that was that vibranium was found? It's called what? Wakanda. Yeah. So it's not a hypothetical Wakanda thing.
Okay, I want to mention. Can I mention?
Mention.
All right. Yeah. I had a friend in campus. He comes from the Kisi community. So there's a time we were talking. We're just boys. We're just standing somewhere having conversation. And then they had an issue with the girlfriend. So they pulled aside to have that discussion. And they were shocked when he slapped her.
Ooh.
And he mentioned that from my home, women don't talk back at men.
Okay. So that's extremely problematic, one, because that is a violent man.
Yes.
And being a violent man does not, we don't conflate issues with one person. Like, for example, if you want to do evidence, we don't take a minority and try to conflate the identity of the minority onto the majority.
Yes.
So that is just one man. Perhaps he's one man who was raised in a violent home, most likely. He witnessed violence in his home. Perhaps there's a lot of nuance and stuff, but you cannot say that all Kisi men are violent. You can't do that. So the same way we are saying, you cannot say all men are like that. So, and that's what we need to do. What we need to do is to understand the nuance.
Wow.
Because some of these things we call toxic masculinity are toxic behaviors of men who have undergone, who are raised in toxic environments.
So these are two different things.
Two different things.
There is masculinity.
Yes.
There is toxicity.
There's toxicity.
Can we address toxicity?
Yes.
Leave masculinity alone.
Out. Exactly.
Okay.
Let's address toxicity. And by addressing toxicity, how do we do it?
Yeah.
We need to encourage men to process their childhood, because there are so many men who have gone through childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Andres, I don't know what you experienced with sex, but I remember when I was in Dandora, as young as before, when I was 5, I remember there was a neighbor of mine, she died, so I can call her name, Mwikali, who used to fondle my private parts. I was barely 10, That is sexual assault. You get that?
Yeah.
Many men will tell you that their first sexual experiences was with the house help or an older auntie.
Yes.
They will tell you that many of their sexual experiences are not very, very consensual.
Yeah.
You find that many boys were beaten terribly, either by teachers or they were beaten by people. So by the time a boy is born, they are born into a world that is by nature designed to sort of beat them into submission. So you begin to grow into that era. And that is the ultimate outcome of an environment that is toxic, will produce toxic men. So if you just decide that you're going to ban men as toxic, then you are forgetting that, what you need to do is to look at the toxic environments that produce toxic aspects of this men.
All right.
So once we do that, then we can encourage men to go for therapy, we can encourage men to process their own trauma, we can encourage men to journal more, we can encourage men to seek help, because also there are aspects of masculinity that prevent men from what we call positive health-seeking behaviors. Right. So you find that a man sometimes might wait till they're overwhelmed and they go to the hospital because they think that, by this bad thing, it's just a small thing, I'll continue working. So if we try to help men understand that there's some aspects of being a man that might disadvantage you, and we don't say it by blaming them, then perhaps we can improve their livelihoods and the lives of these men.
What can be one of these aspects of being a man that we can challenge, maybe from our own initiatives?
Yes. So one is that for me, I personally challenge the concept that men should not be emotional. That for me is something that is very dear to me, because there's a reason why God gave us emotions. I'm not saying that you start trembling here like a child. No, I'm not saying that you become hysterical.
But when you say trembling here like a child, a man should not tremble like, should a lady tremble like a child? Not
necessarily. I'm not saying that. By trembling like a child, I mean you are not in control of yourself. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Like, you are a small problem and you're out of control. So you need to be in control of your emotions.
But also, small is relative.
Exactly. Small is exactly.
An issue like, let's say, a boy falls off from a bike. it can be such a small issue from like where we grew up. Actually, we never had the three-wheelers. We started riding bike like the two-wheelers.
Like what the president launched recently.
Some started with that, and eventually they learned. So there was less falling. They gained their stability along the way. But now we have like, I know our background is almost the same. So those who started with two-wheelers, now you fall, you tell the boy, be in control of how you're feeling. Sometimes it's embarrassment because it depends on where did he fall. Were there like people looking? It shames him. Does he cry? Or does he not? Because now you need to be in control. So boys, there are those who will not cry, will just manage it. Some will not.
By what I meant was that, and I'm glad you've raised that, because that's a very important thing, because we cannot minimize people's experiences to consider what is important and what is not important. But what I meant is that as adult male, we are often, sometimes many of us are not encouraged to be emotional, not to show emotions. Why I'm saying because that is important is because by showing emotions, we are able to release the pent-up, because even there's positive emotion, there's negative emotion. So positive emotions could be joy, could be happiness, could be all that. But negative emotions could be anger, could be outbursts. Okay, I don't want to call them negative or positive, but let me just call them emotions. So by showing a range of emotions, it can help you to process your own issues. So for example, if you're a man who constantly processes your emotions, chances are that you are less likely to be violent. By just processing, when you're happy, you're happy. When you're sad, you're sad. When you are angry, you're angry. So when you bottle them up, then one day you blow up and you blow up and you realize that you've chopped somebody's hands. And then you realize that, by the Lord doesn't care whether you are angry for a second, you are in jail serving life. And there unakula maharagwe na githeri, and then you start to harass us by sending us text here of saying, we send you 5,000 sijui number, tumia kwa hii number. While you could be all that. So that's one of the things that I think it's important that we do that. Secondly, I think we need men to change their health-seeking behaviors, which is extremely important to me, because you realize that many men, the life expectancy of men is often lower than that of women. It's not because men are reckless, it's because our health-seeking behaviors are bad. So for example, Andreas, you've been feeling something in your stomach, but instead of going to check it out, you wait till it's too late. Then you realize that it's a stage 4 cancer, it cannot be treated anymore, and now you're gone. Why? Because there's this perception that men ought to be strong. And strong, you can be strong till the moment that you are late. Last but not least, which is very,
but
very
important. See, just back to you, what you just said, we are expected to be strong. And this is a thing that the society teaches us. Is it women who teach us or men who teach us? Because in the end, it ties to masculinity. It's unmanly to feel just light pain and go to the hospital. But who are telling us these things? Sometimes it's our dads, sometimes it's our big bros. So where is this masculinity? Is it toxic? Is it not toxic? Because
that one we already
struggling to separate the two.
That one we already addressed. There's nothing like toxic masculinity. I don't believe in it personally. But it's both societal but also individual. Because Andreas, what I need people to understand is that psychology is a very nuanced and layered thing. Perhaps the reason why a man doesn't want to go to the hospital when they're feeling pain is not because of the masculinity identities that they were given, but perhaps because our inherent nature is to think about everybody else, so we forget about ourselves.
What about if you were told, actually, you are challenged if you go to the hospital of a slight pain, you're like, no, you're a man,
I don't think, I don't know how many men are challenged when they're unwell, especially with their children, because children always rush to the hospital. Some of these things we ultimately, we like to conflate issues. So maybe it is your personal thing, but then you say, I was told. Or because you're told by somebody who they themselves do not take care of themselves. Men need to embrace self-care. I don't care whether toxic masculinity raised you in a family where you did not think about this thing, but you need to take care of yourself. Go for regular dental checkup.
Yeah.
It's important. Go for regular prostate cancer check. It's important. Go for regular health checkup. It's important. Because if you want to continue being a man and enjoying being a man, you need to be healthy.
Yeah.
There's no joy in being a man who's bedridden or unhealthy. You won't even enjoy the full experience of being a man.
Yeah.
You won't. But if you really want to conquer the world and grow and become all that God has created you to be, then you need to think about yourself. So the last thing I need men to do is to be selfish.
Wow.
Men need to be selfish. Men need to be selfish.
Tell us, why do we need to be selfish?
We need to be selfish because everybody else is selfish except us. We're thinking about my mother, my father, my sisters, my siblings, my family, because men are generally wired to provide and to be protectors and do all this sort of stuff, which is excellent. But I needed to see men who have retired and they're back home.
Yeah.
They're estranged from their children because the children ask, we never told you to stay away and stay late at night to working, providing for us. We just wanted you to be present. But then there are men who are present and they're told, we never told you to be present. We want you to go out and provide. So these are called double standards. So you'll never meet the needs of the society and the needs of your family. A man, one of the things you need to be content, and my father tells me this all the time, is that the biggest job that you will do is being a father or being a man. Most of it would be ungrateful. You get ungrateful return. The kicks of there will be the kicks of a donkey. Yeah. That's what you will always get. So you find that many men retire without proper planning. So most of them retire and depend on their children. These children don't love them. These children don't think they're important. These children want to remove their mothers from that space and take their mothers abroad while their fathers are suffering. So men, you need to think about your retirement. So what are you putting aside for you as a man? So that when the high blood pressure comes, when the prostate issues come, when now you no longer are strong to get things, you can decide that today I'm going to treat myself to a good meal, and you have the ability without depending on people whom perhaps are don't love you. Another selfish thing you can do is to ensure that you invest in your children and you're present in their lives. Because sometimes men think that it's either or, that it's either providing or being present, but you can balance both. Because these children ultimately in the old age can either be estranged from you or they can love you. So if you invest bad behavior while children are growing up, ultimately these children grow up and they say, my dad wasn't there for me, why should I be there for them? And at old age, men receive less compassion than any other category.
But you're telling us to be selfish and also telling us to take care.
By that I mean balance. What I'm saying is balance. And being selfish is knowing that I need to put things aside for me as a man, but I also need to invest in my family and my children, because that's a very core part of what men do. Be selfish. Take yourself on good treatment. Go on road trips. Enjoy, and never allow anybody to guilt trip you and saying, why were you out with the boys? Say, I was out with the boys because it is important to me, and doesn't need to make sense to you.
Who is this?
And
somebody
enjoy.
else?
It doesn't matter. Could be a friend, could be a wife, could be a spouse, could be anybody. But do not allow the words of somebody who has never been a man to make you feel bad about being a man, because they have absolutely no idea. So these friends
are female friends.
It can be female friends, can be your girlfriend, can be your mom, can even be your father.
Someone is not. Your father's been a man.
Exactly.
So you said someone who's not been a man. Yes.
I'm saying mostly women. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we need to be very selfish.
Exactly.
To me fair, to say to me.
Don't send fare. What are you doing with a woman who needs fare to come to your house? Why are you lowering your bar? Another reason of being selfish is you're going to have to date somebody who adds value to your life. You cannot just date anybody.
Yeah.
We cannot be people who rescue women. It's not our work to rescue women.
All right.
It's not our work to rehabilitate badly raised women. It's not our work. It's not our work to get women out of poverty.
Yeah.
No, it's not your work, Andreas. Your work is to become a better man and get somebody else who's being better. Come together, build a better life.
Okay.
But if today, the way you're working hard, you've gone for therapy, I've gone for therapy, I've done all these things, then you meet a woman who's broken and toxic and funny and is not hardworking, they'll pull your weight down. And then ultimately, what you will be doing is instead of growing as a man, you will be dealing with the nonsense of this toxic woman. And the same is for women. So when a woman is is blessed and is working hard, get somebody who's equally that. It's simply the law of compounding interest. If you become better, two better people can chase at 10,000. That's what the Bible says. One can chase 1,000, two can chase 10,000.
So you should never go down, lower the case.
Don't go down. Don't go down. You'd rather be single by yourself.
Right.
Don't send fare. In fact, if you send fare, where's Andrew Kibe's whip?
Where your whip? Purely has linguistic skills.
Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Don't send fare.
But you can take them out for dinner?
We can take them out for dinner. Also be taken out for dinner. It's not only your work all the time to take out people. It should be reciprocity. Reciprocity is the rule of dating. Yes, when you buy a woman a nice thing, let her buy you a nice thing. Don't just be the man who gives. I don't expect anything. You do expect to be treated well. You do expect to be told thank you. You do expect these things.
To be given baby boy.
Exactly. Yes, you deserve those things. Kwani, what is wrong with? I mean, is it only socks that can be gifts that they buy to us?
They buy
socks and belts only. It's a standard gift they buy to us.
There's someone who posted that it's my boy's birthday, my guy's birthday, but what do men even like? Other women?
If it's your thing and your wife doesn't mind, go for it. Exactly. If she doesn't mind and she's willing to give you and she knows that's important to you, what's wrong with that? Let me use a Bible story. When Abraham was old, they looked for, when David was old, they looked for a young girl to give him warmth. So perhaps that's what you need, warmth. It's not anything more, it's warmth that you need.
So the women who actually get a lot of followers online, just bashing men, talking about men this, men that. And I know people, especially people from my community, have been profiled as teachers in the lecturers in the University of Character Development, you know. So it becomes something because sometimes you're having interaction with a lady and then you realize, they learn, you're Luo. So I know what awaits me, something like that, you know. So it's about the narrative that has been sold out there. But I'm seeing constantly so many women talking about, men who are not there for their kids. And it's a big number. I'm meeting so many young people. I was a teacher at some point. I had a class that almost 78% were boys who didn't have any relationship with their father. And I was wondering, I had to raise the issue in the staff room, like, hey guys, what's going on? So everyone started doing an evaluation of what is it like from their classes. And you realize that there are almost half the population were boys raised without fathers. They just know that their father exists somewhere. And then, these people who wake up every day in the morning just to bash men, just talk about men. So is there a problem?
Yes, and I think what we need more, Andreas, is empathy and compassion. So some of these women who are doing that, they're legitimate. But their legitimacy is based off of unhealed trauma. So for example, a man hurt you. Then you build off a ministry or a revolution or whatever out of that. The same way with the what we call the manosphere. These men who are hurt by women, then they build an entire narrative around bashing women. So it's both people who have not healed their own traumas. For me, Andreas, and I've told you this many times, I've gone through therapy many times. I journal excessively, I work out, I do all these things that make me better. But I wasn't always like that. These are things I started doing in 2018 after my life went south. I was the one who was always sending fares, not fair really, but lifting people out of poverty. I've always dated very intelligent, successful women. That's my type. I don't date lazy women. Lazy, broke women who require fare. And I date women who have their own houses, so we can both visit each other. And they have their own vehicle. So when they require you to have a car, we both meet at the parking lot.
Wow, Dannish.
So back to what I was...
No. Before we go there, Kibe whips, let's bring them up. So it's okay for a man to go to a woman's house and...
That's I don't have to lose... You've raised a very good point. You've raised a very good point. And the good point, what I was saying is this, that... the problem with social media is that it has given access to everyone. And by everyone I mean even people who are unhealed. So people are spewing trauma. And because trauma is attractive, so you find them having a lot of followers. So we have in the manosphere, then we have in the feminine movement. you find that the root of all these things are what we call unhealed trauma. I once talked to a friend of mine who's raising a boy. She's a very popular feminist in this country, and I asked her, are you sure that the world you're raising, the world you're creating is good for your son? Then I asked her a question. So your son, the way you're working so hard, and yes, the father is not there, and you're raising this son. But one day your son has gone to a university, has worked so hard, your son has gotten the first job, he's 21 years old. And then a lady just accuses your son of rape. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not, his life is completely ruined. Nobody wants to touch him because men don't deserve fairness. I asked her a second thing. What if your son is walking in the streets at night and cops find him, and by the perception that a man is inherently bad and evil and criminal, he's arrested or is gunned down because extrajudicial executions in this country, especially in informal settlements, disproportionately kills men. In fact, men are the ones who are, and it's men between the ages of 14 to about 21. You know that because you've come from informal settlements. Then she was questioning, I had never thought about it like that. I said, yes. Because of the pain you've gone through, it is your responsibility to heal so that you create a better world for your son. Don't perpetuate your pain so that because of your pain, you create a bad environment for your son. The same way with this man. Because this woman hurt you, because this woman left you, because this woman did this to you, you cannot build a narrative that bashes all the women, because one day it is your daughter who will meet the bad stereotypes you're creating now. It is your woman who will, it's your daughter who will meet this man whom you've been modeling, and therefore they realize, oh my goodness, I've created a world that I can't believe in. So we must think about the world we want. And therefore my urge to women and men is that the most fundamental thing we ought to do to ourselves is to heal. To heal from our trauma, to heal from those things that hurt us. I'm not saying that it is your responsibility or it is because of you that these things happen to you. But I'm saying that it is your responsibility to heal. You gotta have to reach within you and pull out the daggers that were put in you. Pull them out and bandage yourself, because you're an adult now. Your mother is not gonna come and tell you that, oh, my son, heal. No, it's upon you, and that's what I've done. And it's given me a lot of peace. Now it doesn't matter whether I have money or not. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. My identity is not rooted in my performance. My identity is rooted in who I am and what God says I am, because I'm also a Christian. That is more important to me than success and whatever. So today, if you're living in a 3-bedroom house, there's always a 4-bedroom house. You live in a 4-bedroom house, maybe it's a penthouse, there's always a 4-bedroom house, main house. Maybe you live in this neighborhood, there's always a better neighborhood. So we cannot keep up with the Joneses. It is not enough. We can never achieve it. So we gotta be content and be happy.
Wow. That is something very powerful, because I also know like a lady who is married, but speaks against men, speaks against marriage, and she is in one. So it gives me confusion, like what's happening in her world?
It's what's happening in our world is that what she's showing you is less than 0.1% of her life. Maybe for her it's business. There are these videos that have been trending a lot of a man coming up to a woman and asking her, you date a man with a small dick and rich, or would you date a man who's broke with a big dick, or you do date a man who's like this, and they ask all these questions. I was telling my friend, these things are scripted. This woman perhaps is dating a man with that small thing and no money, and she's very happy because the needs of dating are more than sexual. It's companionship. It's so much than just money. So when we are watching things online, there's a media ethics class I did at the university. One of the things we had to do was to talk about what we call media literacy. Media literacy in this country is very low. When you see news running there, just know that there's a lot of editing that has been done. There's a lot of framing. There's a lot of whatever you see is a very small portion of the entire iceberg. That woman might just be saying this to make money because she's realized that this thing is actually working. But I want to call her out that often people live to the archetypes we've created for them. So if you keep on saying men are toxic, they'll ultimately be toxic. Because I believe in the power of the words and how we define people.
You say call a dog a name and it becomes exactly that.
And also another thing they do is that you say in our culture, you know, when a dog is called Sude, you know what Sude means? Sude is what?
It's like a stray dog.
A rabid dog. What happens to Sude once a dog has been called Sude?
It's killed.
Exactly. So if you want to kill something, you first give it a bad name. So if you want to finish men and make it, don't feel bad about it, like what they did to the Jews, you begin to give them bad names. So then once you give them bad names, then it doesn't bother you that, like I'm reading this book called Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, who defends men on death row in the US, mostly disproportionately men are on death row than women. And all these cases is that you find that for every 10 deaths on 10 executions on death row, you find that almost 40% of them are falsely accused.
Wow.
But because of the narrative we've created, so it's okay. We can say we can take men into the gas chamber, we can take men into the electric chair, and we don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
We can take men into prisons and incarcerate them and make them turn prisons into enterprises. It doesn't bother us. And by the way, you know, the highest number of men who are in prison are charged with petty offenses. Petty offenses make up 70% of prison populations in this country, and they are men.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother us, and we'll never advocate because we already said men are bad. Do you know that extrajudicial executions in this country is predominantly men? Do you know that men die by suicide more than women? Actually, in 2021, between the month of January and the month of June, about 520 people died by suicide. 70% of them were men.
Wow.
But because we've already said this toxic masculinity, it doesn't move us to think about policies and actions that can help support these people. So that's my pain for these women who carry us, because we are all carried by women.
Yeah.
And they're creating the world that their sons will never live in. I'm really shocked.
Yes.
But also for these men who are creating a world that the women will never live in. And therefore that's why we need to bridge the gap and talk and have compassion and have empathy and try and understand and have nuance and have context, so that we're not quick to jump into judgment. That's easy. We're not quick to condemn. That's easy. But it's harder and it's more radical for us to show kindness and compassion and empathy, and to understand and to build bridges and to try to bring people of different opposing sides and worldviews to come together and try and build a world that all of us can be proud of and can live in.
I know I would want to bring the conversation on therapy much later. But again, where is the role of women in building this masculinity in boys? Because a good number of men are actually raised by women. Even in families where our fathers are, the person who, I can say, more than 50% spends more time with the children, boys or girls, are the mothers. Now, where's the place of women in building this masculinity that later turns out to be toxic? Now that, you know, I agree, we have to separate those two things. But now, what's their role now?
So back to what I was saying. So what we need to do is to think more critically about solutions that moving forward, because it's so important that we use our platforms to advocate for ideals that can change the world. One is that first of all, I think women ought to separate the beef they have with their men, their husbands, and not pour it down onto children. Because the way my mother relates with my father, they're relating as lovers. The way I relate with my father, I relate with him as a father. Those are two different dynamics. So often you find that sometimes mothers who have been hurt by fathers, or they feel hurt by fathers, may not be legitimate, then come down and they begin to poison these children. And eventually these children grow with a certain negative perception towards men. And that's what then eventually drives this thing. That's one. Number two, I'd also like to challenge men to be a bit more involved. So for example, if you're a father, try as much as possible to spend time with your children. There are things that a child will only learn by spending time with you. Like take your children fishing, go driving with them. I remember when I was young, my dad used to carry me on his shoulders, and we'd go to Langata and just stay outside Wilson Airport. And we'd just watch flights take off and come back, and after that we'd be bought for that big Fanta orange soda and bread that was never sliced. Do you remember?
Yes,
and it was the best day, you know. Well, I remember when we used to travel from the village to Nairobi, and I would sit on his laps and I'd ask him questions. Why is it called Kariandosi? What do they why are flamingos pink? Sometimes what the fathers do is just to answer questions of curious children. And of course, many times my father would take my hand and walk with me to Dandora and just show me around into shops in Dandora and say, oh, this is my son, and he was number 2 in school, which was not a big deal because
my dad still does that.
Exactly. So those are things that are very small, but they can build the esteem of a child, and they can build children, so that instead of just being the father who buys toys and gifts and provides, you can be the father who's more intentional in building the esteem of your child and carrying them and walking them, not the American or Eurocentric ideal of being a father of crying and all that. There's nothing wrong with crying, but we must also look at masculinity from the cultural context that we come from. And I'm not saying that we must tell our children we love them. If you can, it's fine, but our parents showed us love in many other ways that is not just limited to language alone. So you can't tell me, my father never told me he loves me. But he did show you he loved you. But because you have watched so many soap operas and you watched so many movies which are Eurocentric now, you think your father doesn't love you because he did not hug you, did not kiss you.
Yeah.
Because we believe in some sort of rules in the African culture, and that's okay. So that's my nini. And then last but not least, to single mothers, which is very important, is that I'm going to say a very controversial thing. We need to call out so-called men who are not involved in the lives of these children. But we also need to call out women who continuously give opportunities to men who are not going to be present in the lives of their children. It takes two to tango. What is it? What's your taste with men who are unavailable? So even as we blame these men, we need to ask you too that perhaps you need to think about why you only attract men who are emotionally unavailable.
But there could be further issues.
And it's your responsibility as a woman now to deal with those things, because they will continue producing results. And those results are going to be catastrophic. I'm saying that we have called so many men names, but I don't even use that word deadbeats. Yeah. Because it's a label which I don't agree with. Because there are so many contexts that can make a man not to be in the life of a child. But when we make it deadbeat, we remove all that nuance and context and we judge somebody. It doesn't bother me anymore, by the way. Even if somebody calls somebody that, I don't care. But we need to also ask women that you say that your gut feeling is high, my gut feeling is okay, I notice red flags, I'm good. So it only stops when it comes to being impregnated by a deadbeat man. That's when it stops.
But do they have a choice? Can they see?
It's your responsibility. Because remember, when a man makes you pregnant, that man will not carry the baby. You will carry the baby. So as we talk about body autonomy, as we talk about...
how do you tell that this man has the potential of being...
No, a woman needs to take care of her body. Do not get pregnant for a man unless you're sure that this man is like this, like this. Let's remove cases of rape and all these things, which are extremely tragic. But when there's consensual sex, do not carry a child for a man. And I'm saying this to women. Do not carry a child for a man if you don't know that this man will be around. Because I'm telling you, this man can move to another country. Of course, we have the laws that can decide and can get this man. But how many men in this country? We have almost 70% of men in the informal economy. Are you going to spend your time chasing this man to provide for your child, while you could just decide that, by the way, I'm not going to be pregnant until I'm sure enough that you are a man right to help me get children? So that is a part of the responsibility we need to have, that side of the conversation. Okay. We need to call men to be involved in the lives of their children. And that we are doing religiously. We are shaming them in the media. We've even given them a tag called deadbeat. Is fine. Now come back to this side and tell women that it's also your responsibility to not just get pregnant for any man. And when you do, you also must bear the responsibility that perhaps my judgment was wrong, perhaps I was not okay, and maybe perhaps I also need to take my own responsibility.
So and wonder. Is that they also need to accept that I might have made a wrong decision.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Then I think the contention I had with this is resolved, because there are those experiences that people have where they were sure this was going to work, then it doesn't work. So the issue is, as you brand men deadbeat, also acknowledge that you also made a mistake of believing that you're going to have a future with this guy.
Exactly. Wow. And we're not blaming you for doing that, but by acknowledging that, we are helping you stop a pattern. Because if we don't help you stop a pattern, you will eventually get another deadbeat. That's why you find sometimes women who have multiple baby daddies who are not there in their lives, and you wonder like, whoa, okay, all of them. Who's the denominator here? It's only you. Okay. These are three different men.
So I want to thank you so much, Odongo, for coming to the show. And I know I would want, what would be your parting shot when we are talking about masculinity? Or what's your message there to men?
My message is to society that men are a product of the society that we live in. And we've got to be intentional in creating empathy and compassion for women. I mean, for men rather. Men are the only people who are loved for performing, not for existing. If you're a father and you fall out and you get into alcohol, chances are that you might be homeless and your family will not love you. But what if what you need is just a few more months of support, a few more months of lazing around, and eventually you pick yourself? We need to give room for men to make mistakes without them being the very same things that we used to define them. So the society that we are creating, if we're going to create men who are not shown love and compassion.
Yeah.
Those men are going to be brutal. Those men are going to be bad, and they're going to spend so much money in rehabilitative process, whether it's rehab, which men are from the largest majority, or whether it's a criminal justice system where your taxes are going to keep this man in prison. But we can avoid all that and take that money into social programs that can create spaces for men to love and to be cared for and to be shown compassion and to be shown empathy. That really is my parting shot, Andrea.
So that's it. We were having Dannish Odongo. He prefers to be called Odongo because it has more rooting, more meaning. And that's it. Thank you guys for always watching. Always remember to subscribe and to like. We thank you for allowing us to come through your spaces. To the Click Pictures, thank you guys for always doing a good job of producing this show, bringing us conversation on air every other week. Until we meet in the next episode, bye-bye.